can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like Ron Popeil, the godfather of infomercials. This is particularly relevant in this particular interview, the founder of the P90X, RX Bar, Atari, and many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25, which I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran. Our mission is to connect you with your best referral partners and customers. We do that with a done-for-you podcast service. In my opinion, podcasting is the best thing that's ever happened to my business and my life. Met my business partner, best friends. I'm able to connect with amazing people and get great content out to the world. We will mention also From Poop to Gold podcast, so you could check that out as well. We also have a done-for-you lead generation service where we manually send consistent flow of customized outreach messages. This is not paid advertising. And also we do a done-for-you VIP event for large conferences, software companies, or agencies. If any of those sound interesting, you can email us at support@rise25.com. We have limited bandwidth, so because it requires a lot of humans to do the work, so email us and we can talk more. I am especially excited to have today's guest. We have Daniel Harmon, co-founder and creative visionary at Harmon Brothers. Daniel, thanks for, I'm hoping on this, we do some kind of drawing on your belly button and it talks. That's really what I'm hoping for in this particular interview. So
that was mainly going to be my first question.
Okay, good.
Can I show my tummy?
Totally. Anything's fair game here. They use storytelling and humor and direct response to create social ads that sell products. And they're behind some of the most viral ads and have collectively driven more than 1 billion views, over 300 million in sales, and revolutionized the way products are marketed. You've probably seen some of their ads. They've created internet advertising blockbusters, including Squatty Potty, Purple Mattress, Chatbooks, FiberFix, and Poo Pourri, just to name a few. They also have a book that I highly recommend. I've listened to it, believe it or not, 2 times. Yes, maybe in 2 times speed, but that's fine.
That's twice more than I have.
Okay, cool. You lived it. You don't have to listen to it. So, From Poop to Gold, the marketing magic of Harmon Brothers. This will give you the behind-the-scenes view of their company, how they create blockbuster ads. Daniel, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Jeremy.
Super excited. There's so many good stories and so many really creative things you've done. I have to start with, growing up, you had 9, you're one of 9.
Yeah, one of 9 siblings.
So what's a good story from growing up in, I can't even imagine, first of all, a crazy story.
A crazy
household.
story. Well, we grew up in Idaho, and so it was very rural. My closest neighbor lived about a quarter mile away. And I grew up, I had the stereotypical Idaho farm boy life in that I grew up working on a potato farm with my uncles as well as a family friend, and got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to change irrigation pipes. It's just basically changing a giant sprinkler system on a field, right?
Right.
And ultimately, what ended up happening is when you go out and you work and do kind of this blue-collar labor, you say to yourself, I want to do something else. At least I did, right? Every day I'd be at work, I'd be like, I'm going to college. I'm going to college. I'm going to find a way to break through this. But my brothers and I, we were always kind of entrepreneurial. And what ended up happening is we decided that we were going to sell some potatoes in order to make some money. And ultimately, we would buy these potatoes from my uncle's farm, pack them up in these 50-pound boxes, and drive them down to Utah, which I'm sure was illegal. But anyway, we didn't know any better, right? And we'd go down door to door to families in Utah where not all their neighbors were potato farmers, and we would sell these potatoes. And ultimately, we had a lot of success with it and started doing the math and realizing, we're making like twice or maybe even 3 times what we would be if we were just doing a regular hourly wage job. And this was something that we would do like in the wintertime when we weren't working on the farm. And we did it in order to earn money to pay for our mission for our church and to pay for college and those types of things. And that was my first exposure to sales, was going door to door, knocking on it, being like, "Hi, does your family eat potatoes? No? Okay, bye." I mean, I didn't know anything else.
You're qualifying them. That's fine.
Yes, oh, you eat rice? Okay, well, let's go to someone else. No, but it was very much like, it was something that most people wanted, and it was kind of a little bit more of a sob story. I guess the credibility we would bring into it was, we're doing this to earn money, to pay for a mission that we're going to serve for our church, or to pay for college, and that was enough to be like, oh, it's this 15-year-old kid. Yeah, I'll just buy their potatoes, $20 for the 50-pound box, and that's what we did. It's just sold potatoes.
I think so. Going door to door puts hair on the chest. I think some of the best infomercials of all time stem from pitchmen,
yes,
or people who sold door to door, right? And so, Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we always say that we learn to sell first in person, face to face, human to human, long before we ever learn to do it in any kind of social video or online. And so the principles that you find are basically, they're universal, right? Sales principles go back, I mean, probably centuries, but for sure, easily most of the sales principles that we employ have probably been around for, the better part of a century for sure. And we're just applying them now to online video. But yeah, I mean, we learned to be salesmen long before we learned to be, video creators and ad makers.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to overcome, when you're face to face, you can overcome objections, but when you produce it, you have to know the objections and overcome them before, right?
Yes.
So talk a little bit. I want to kind of go back through the evolution, because you did door-to-door sales for potatoes. You did security systems. Take us up to the present, but I want to hear about the process, really, of you creating the ad. But potatoes, what was next?
Yeah, so the next one was we did do alarm sales or home security systems. I did it for an ADT authorized dealer.
What's the pitch for that?
Well, the pitch for that is essentially,
you rob them and then you go to their
Well, at the time, the pitch was asking them to put an ADT sign in their yard and to do advertising in their community to show other people that this was something that they could put in their home, and that is, as long as they qualified with good credit and stuff, we would do an alarm system for free. They would just pay like an installation cost, and then they would just keep up the monthly monitoring service fee. And that was basically the pitch. And what was interesting is during that time was I actually learned that when someone says, "Oh, I don't want an alarm system," that doesn't actually mean no, right? That's an objection that they're bringing up, but there's something else behind that, and how to kind of get to the root of that and overcome that objection and be able to address it and be able to listen to people and not always take no for an answer.
Right.
So kind of learned that skill set, as well as kind of being able to take people through sort of a problem solution type of sale.
Right.
That was kind of my first exposure to that. And my brother and I, Jeffrey, he's a co-founder of Harmon Brothers as well, but no longer, he's just an advisor now here at Harmon Brothers. But we were two of the top salesmen in the company. Wow. That year that we joined. Our CEO now, Benton Crane, was also on our sales team.
Really?
And he actually had a period where he was really knocking it out of the park there. And so we learned this kind of sales stuff in order just to be able to pay college tuition, And ultimately, we ended up ultimately, I also had a business where I did window washing, sold that door to door, and did the washing of the windows myself. And then I did some business to business sales with a tech company that my brother had started and stuff. And so learned all this stuff about selling, again, before I ever made my first video. And it just provided a really good foundation for us.
What was the real reason people didn't buy? So they said, "I don't want an alarm system." What did you find was the real reason?
Most people would say that they felt secure. Oh, this is a safe neighborhood. That was one of the main ones. Mostly it was like, oh, I don't want to add another bill. It's a monitoring fee. I don't want to have a recurring monthly bill. Forget it. Those are the real main two concerns that we had. Kind of people can't come up with, and then there were some bizarre ones from there. But that was kind of what it boiled down to.
Yeah. So that taking us up to Harmon, or the start of Harmon Brothers.
Yeah.
Your brother Jeff was in a classroom, and a guy from Aura Brush presented.
Yeah. So there was this inventor, Dr. Bob, and he had invented this product called the Aura Brush, which was a tongue cleaner for bad breath. And he had actually, basically he was trying to market this product because he knew it was effective. It did remove the gunk on your tongue that causes most of the bad breath. But he put it in stores and had basically no success with it. And then in a last-ditch effort, he goes over to the local university, which is Brigham Young University, or BYU. My brother's there in a marketing class, just kind of half listening. Well, he's really more on his computer, like reading TechCrunch and Mashable and these kind of things, and just reading up about marketing. And one of the conclusions that one of the groups within this marketing class came to when they did this research on the Aura Brush was that, if you were to sell this online, only 7% of people would buy it. So just don't even bother. That's just not a very high percentage. And then Jeffrey, my brother, raises his hand and says, well, wait a minute, 7% of like a population of like 300 million, that's still millions of people. Why not sell to them? And Dr. Bob really loved that response and kind of approached Jeffrey afterwards and said, I want you to market this product for me. And Jeffrey was working at a tech company at the time, and he kind of started doing this on the side, and ultimately ended up kind of pioneering a lot of, he put together, he and my brother Neil, he brought him in as well, ended up putting together a lot of what we would now consider a sales funnel, right? Where they made a landing page, and this offer to get the Aura Brush for free, and you pay shipping and handling.
Just to orient people, I think at the time YouTube was just starting out, or what was the landscape like?
YouTube was just starting out, and Jeffrey was saying to himself, okay, how can we get the conversion rates up on this video or up on this landing page? And he found on YouTube a video that tested how you could test how you have bad breath, right? Use a spoon, scrape it on your tongue, smell it, and all that kind of stuff. And he put that, and it didn't have anything to do with Aura Brush, mind you, right? Other than the subject matter, but it didn't have any brand of Aura Brush in it.
Right.
And he put that in on the website, and the conversion rates went up by over 30%.
Wow.
And he's like, okay, there's something to this. What if we actually make a video of this ourselves?
Right.
So he writes up this initial script. He recruits his roommates to help shoot and help finish writing it and make it really funny. So he gets his roommate Joel, and he gets his roommate Devin, and they make this video. And he recruits a guy from his own work that was always ranting, going on political rants, and he was really funny to listen to. Brings him in, and they just go shoot this thing in a pool hall in the middle of the night on a white, just a white wall. And kind of basing it off of that initial concept of testing for bad breath, but then integrating it with the sale of the Aura Brush. And they put that out there, and then they start running ads to it because YouTube had just barely released its ad platform.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey was buying up, I think, the majority of the inventory on YouTube for ads at that time because it was really cheap because they were just trying to get it in the game.
Now I think it's not really widely used, right?
It is widely used, but
compared to like Facebook or Google.
When you think of it in terms of like the innovator's dilemma, right? That YouTube was at a point where they had to come in so cheap in order to compete with broadcasters and with TV and stuff in order to get people to justify even taking a chance on it. But that's what the game he's playing in. And it started to work. They started to be able to drive views, and all of a sudden it was 1,000 views, 10,000, 100,000, millions of views on this video. And then from that, they end up getting into Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens, and all these different retailers with the Aura Brush. And that was kind of the first foray into the video side of things. It's funny, he sent me I was in Chicago at the time, working at a design agency there as a writer. And he was sending me cuts of the video and saying, what do you think of this? And asking me like to consult on the script and things like that. And at the time I was like, man, this is a really long video. It's like over 2 minutes long. It's really long for an ad. He's like, well, did you watch the whole thing? I was like, well, yeah. Were you interested? Yeah. Were you ever bored? No, not really. He's like, okay, well then we're fine. And just because
no such thing as long copy or long video is just boring, right?
Right, just boring stuff, right? And then, I mean, ultimately, like I was coming from the school of thought of everything is 30 seconds, or maybe it's 15 seconds or a minute or whatever it is, whatever was set up for broadcast. But at any rate, that was very successful. My brothers and I later resigned from Orabrush in order to do the Poo Pourri campaign.
Right.
And the owner of Poo Pourri had seen the success of Orabrush, was like, man, I want that done for my brand. And we kind of jumped ship and went over there and basically did that all over again. And we're like, wow, there's something really here. And at the time, there was no intention of starting an agency at all.
How did they find you at the time, Daniel? Because did you guys have
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. So
yeah, she LinkedIn stalked Jeffrey.
Got it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
didn't even have a name of the company at the time.
We didn't have a name of the company. She just was sending him product and say, try this out. This is really cool. And I remember him giving me a bottle of it. Try this out. This stuff's really cool and everything. And he was talking to my brother Neil about it one day. He just kind of pulls me aside and is like, I think I might leave Orabrush. And I mean, they were co-founders of Orabrush, right? Neil and Jeffrey were. But I think we're going to go do this Poo Pourri thing. I was like, what? But then once I like kind of started experimenting with the product and stuff, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And we all resigned, went over and did that campaign, and we needed a place to be able to put basically the money for the campaign. We needed a business entity. And so this is kind of a middle of the night decision, like 12 o'clock at night. Right. What are we going to call this thing? And then, let's just call it Harmon Brothers. And if we need to change it, we will later, whatever, It just generic as crap. and so, but that's what ended up happening. And then once the Poo Pourri campaign went live, and all of a sudden Huffington Post shared it, and Adweek shared it, and Advertising Age shared it. And then everyone was citing creative agency Harmon Brothers. We were like looking back and forth across it at each other. This is in my brother's kitchen, right? We launched the whole Poo Pourri campaign for my brother's kitchen. We're just looking back and forth at each other being like, are we an agency? I guess we're an agency. Like we weren't even thinking in those terms. And because at the time, the thought was we would ultimately be joining Poo Pourri the way we had Orabrush. But it turned out that business-wise, that wasn't really going to make sense for us. And so, that's kind of how Harmon Brothers was born. It was almost in spite of itself.
What I love about the story is the initial payment that your brother got from Orabrush, right?
Oh yeah. So ultimately, when Dr. Bob said, "Come market my Orabrush for me," Jeffrey did a bunch of work for him, and wasn't having what he felt like was a lot of success, but was spending a lot of hours on it. And Dr. Bob was like, "Okay, I want to pay you something for it." And Jeffrey was like, "Well, no, I don't. Well, I haven't made you any money. You don't need to pay me anything yet." And but Dr. Bob felt really bad about it. He's like, "Well, here, let me show you. Let me pay you this." And he goes outside and he's like, "Here, you can have my motorcycle as payment." It was this.
I just pictured Dumb and Dumber for some reason.
Well, I don't know if it was that old, but he's like, "Here, I'll give you my motorcycle as payment." I think part of it was Jeffrey didn't have a car at the time, and Dr. Bob was kind of sick of going and picking him up after school,
right,
after his college classes, to come work with him at his house. And so there's probably some ulterior motives there, maybe a little bit. But that was his first paycheck, was this Honda motorbike that I think he might still have to this day.
Yeah, it's a collector's item. So with Orabrush, at the time, you guys came on staff to help run it and became kind of like an in-house advertising staff.
Yeah, so Jeffrey and Neil helped co-founded along with Dr. Bob after they had that initial success.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey was chief marketing officer. Neil was chief of operations. And then they later recruited me in. I've been doing moonlighting work for them on the side in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then at the time when they finally had made enough money to pull me in full time as an art director, I was in Wisconsin, and they brought me over from there. And we started producing a ton of video content for Orbrush. In fact, that's how I learned to do video. I came up with this concept called Morgan the Orbrush Tongue, which is this guy in this giant tongue suit running around having these little adventures. It's kind of vlog style, if you will, if you are familiar with that format on YouTube stuff. And we did that. We were releasing a video a week for almost 2 years straight.
Wow.
And we did over 100 videos, and that's how I learned video, is just through the repetition of doing them.
So you thought originally, so then you do Poo Pourri, and you'd maybe do a similar type of collaboration, but it turned out a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that was kind of the idea at the beginning. It's like, oh, we're going to be joining this company. We're going to be running the marketing and whatnot. And then, just sometimes things just don't work out business-wise. And so when it became clear that was not our path at all, we instead went on to do some more client work and stuff.
I mean,
Brothers.
Daniel, the part I love about this portion of the story is sometimes people think, wow, like Orbrush, huge success. Poo Pourri, huge success. And they think just money's going to rain and fall from the sky. But at the time, you guys were still, I think there was a part of the story where your brother starts to drive for Uber at the time.
Yeah, so
right?
That was actually our CEO now, Benton, was driving for Uber. So he, as part of the Poo Pourri campaign, he was managing the ad spend and the analytics behind it. And so he had moved himself out. He was working for Deloitte out in Virginia, and he'd moved him and his family out to come work on this Poo Pourri campaign. And after Poo Pourri, we had that, it was successful, the campaign was, but financially for us, it wasn't necessarily terribly successful. And so just kind of the hard knocks of learning business, right, when you're getting going. And
no, that's what I love about the story, because people think,
they've made it, right?
They've made it, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was far from the truth.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was great in that it got our name out there, right? It was amazing in that regard, in that it kind of put us on the map of they've actually done it twice now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could even say 3 times, because there had been Orbrush. We'd released a product called Orpup that we had done it with, which was a bad breath brush for dogs. And then also now Poo Pourri. And so we definitely had leads coming in. And we didn't really have our business model figured out and everything back then. And we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to make ends meet. And yeah, for a while, I was dipping clear into my savings account. I literally drained it almost to zero. The same was happening with Benton and his family. And so he went out to drive Uber while I was working on some video campaigns and stuff. And I mean, we were a little bit naive at the time, where even after Poo Pourri, we did a video for our church and a foundation called the Radiant Foundation, which was this whole nativity video about Jesus. We did it as a collaboration with the piano guys, David Archuleta and Peter Hollins. And it was awesome, but we didn't do it for any profit. There was basically no profit at all. And so we're like, oh, we did this really cool thing for the world and for Jesus, so everything's just going to fall into place. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
You have to wait a little bit.
That's right. You have to wait a little bit more. And so it was just one thing after another, where we had these little kind of no-name kind of clients that we went through and did stuff for, and it wasn't very profitable. We were trying to figure ourselves out. And that was all leading up to when Bobby Edwards of Squatty Potty, the founder of Squatty Potty, reached out to Jeffrey, and he saw the Poo Pourri video and was like, man, I wish that should have been my brand, is what he said. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, I really want to do a video with you guys. And the concept we came up with was to use ice cream as a metaphor for poop. And ultimately, we thought, the problem he came to us with is we so much want to get this on to QVC and these kind of broadcasts. We want to sell it on TV, but it's just too gross to show it on TV.
Did he come to you pre Shark Tank or after?
It was after Shark Tank. So
after Shark Tank. Okay.
they had their initial Shark Tank boom, and they were wanting to sustain the growth, right? They wanted to keep going. They didn't want to just fizzle out with that.
Right.
So he was very right to be thinking in those terms. And Bobby's always been very visionary that way.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, this is Jeffrey's thought process, right? What's like what's like poop but isn't, it was ice cream, like the furthest thing from it. And then we started talking and like, okay, what would poop ice cream? And then basically the internet told us it had to be unicorns. And this is before
he called you at the time though, right? At the time he was asking your advice.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was, are you saying Jeffrey was asking my advice?
Yeah, about specific. I think you guys were brainstorming this.
Yes, we were brainstorming this together. Well, he'd come up with this like metaphor of ice cream, right? And then is that a machine? Is that like a mechanical machine? Like, no, it's got to be like an animal. What if it's a unicorn? And then ultimately, like, what does that ice cream look like? And all these different things that we threw around. And the initial concepts were pretty downright terrible, in that we had like this giant Clydesdale unicorn that would have been terrifying. And it was like on a food truck in the middle of like a big city, right? And it was all these weird things, and it didn't end up being that, thankfully. We got another writer involved besides me and Jeffrey, Dave Vance, who really came with the main, contextual concept of integrating it into a mythical world with a prince.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now a unicorn actually makes sense, right? If we're gonna buy into this, let's really lean into this world in a real way. It's this prince pitching it. And in all honesty, like Bobby was sold on us. And he had initially wanted to go with this, but then decided not to because he had investors that were pushing back on him. And they went and tried a different thing. It didn't work out, and they came back to us about 3 to 4 months later and said, "Yeah, let's just go for it. Let's have you guys figure it out." And when we were sitting down with them to write the script, they didn't get it until, especially Bobby's parents, Bill and Judy, did not get it until this prince was in there. And you were in this mythical world, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, I see how this can work. And that was like a really big moment for us, is to have that breakthrough. Yeah. And then ultimately, like, that's a little bit terrifying to put your brand on the back of as Bobby would say, the crazy wackadoodle unicorn. But he went for it, and it just paid off in a huge way.
I mean, I suggest that anyone go watch all of your ads, specifically, the Squatty Potty ad. It's still, I hate you in a sense, Daniel, because part of that the video is burned into my mind as they're not on the Squatty Potty, and there's a little bit of that rainbow ice cream left in the unicorn, and you're like, that's me right now when I'm not using the Squatty Potty.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's
part of me hates you now, because that is stamped into my brain.
It gets really hard to use public restrooms after you've used the Squatty Potty. So you're like, I'm missing the experience.
Squatty Potty, you also, and again, everyone should check out From Poop to Gold, because you guys really do a good job breaking down. It's not like you just come up with the first version, you launch it, it goes viral. You do a lot of testing, even a lot of iterations, but then when you have that the final cut, or what could be the final cut, you go out and you test it.
Yes.
Talk about that process. I don't think everyone realizes not only do you test it, but then you actually put distribution dollars behind it too. So. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think the best filmmakers, maybe this is a little too broad of a statement. I think it can be a really good policy as a filmmaker or as a comedian to adopt a lot of the same mentality as an entrepreneur does, where an entrepreneur goes out with an idea and a product and tests it on a market and then adjusts it, right?
Yeah.
And essentially that's the way we approach our advertising, that as we make an edit, we show it to people. If they're not laughing, and we can see consistently, this is not getting laughed, let's cut that joke out. It's not helping. Let's get it out of there, right? Or this part is confusing them. We've got to tweak something here to make that right. And so that's the process we go through kind of internally to come up with an ad that we're going to go out and then test in the real world, right? And it's much better to embarrass yourself in front of a few little people than it is in front of millions of people online. And so if you can get into that iterative process with your video of not being too precious about your work and showing it to other people and testing, then that's a really great way to come up with some of the best quality. And then ultimately, we start with our guts, but then you want to test your way into what's actually working. And so we'll test things like the title of the video. The title for the Poo Pourri video, for example, came from a comment of one of the original YouTube commenters said, "Girls don't poop." And we're like, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool. Let's just throw that in as a title." And it tested extremely well, right? It was like 10 or 20% better than anything else that we could come up with ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's the same way where we'll test all sorts of different titles, maybe test them against each other, all sorts of different thumbnails, so the image that you see on your video, the very first image you see, as well as like we'll test the content itself. What are those first few seconds that are going to pull people in? How's that holding people over? We can test all that. YouTube, Facebook, they all provide really robust tools for being able to analyze that data and find out what works with your audiences. And I mean, we always say make it good enough that it doesn't have to be viral. And we feel like that really is the key to it, that if you are making a piece that's so strong that you know when you spend behind it, you can predictably get money back, then all of a sudden the views are going to come along for the ride, right? I mean, so much of what we do is we're kind of riding the middle ground of what the advertising world knows. Because on the one extreme, you have direct response, right? And it's known for brands like Snap, like Slap Chop and ShamWow and
Harmon Peel. Wait, there's more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Other brands that start with S, and they can be very effective at driving sales immediately, right? But then on the other extreme polar opposite end, you have brands like Nike, Red Bull, Apple, Ford, and stuff that are doing just very heavy branding, right? And they're not looking for direct response on that, as much as they have the money to put it out there in front of all the eyeballs in the world, and eventually that's going to come back to them, right? So it's more of a long-term investment kind of thing. But for businesses starting out, that you can't afford to do that. You can't afford to spend that kind of money. And so we said, what if you marry the best of both worlds, and you have both the direct response that sells really well, and then you can marry the really great branding, and that's where our comedy and our branding and stuff comes in. And so that when people don't buy a Squatty Potty, but they watched and laughed at the ad, then as they're walking through Target or Walgreens or something, like, hey, there's a Squatty Potty right there. Should we pick one up? Yeah, let's give it a try. That kind of a thing, you know? And so that's what we do with our Harmon Brothers campaigns. We live kind of in that middle ground of mixing the best of both worlds and not having to necessarily have the stigmas around, direct response and infomercials, and not also necessarily having to have the mega brand or the billions of dollar budget or whatever in order to get your name out there like Verizon has to or something.
Yeah. And specifically, I mean, there's a lot of things you test, and one of them, I mean, obviously, combining the branding and direct response is, you talk about this over and over, is you need to have a call to action, right?
Yes.
What are some of the calls to action that you guys have created or tested? Maybe you switched them, one wasn't working and you switched it to what was, or just in general, what's been working for some of the videos you put out there?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, we kind of have a harmonism with our calls to action at this point, where we say, so if, and then we give kind of a blanket statement that kind of captures everybody. If you're a human being,
poop, you should.
Yeah, exactly. Like if your poo stinks, is the Poo Pourri one. Then click here to order your Poo Pourri today. And I mean, I think the same thing with Squatty Potty is, on purple, it's, so if you or someone sleeps, it's like obviously everybody sleeps, then you can do this. So those are some of the things that we've done, and it's not to say people need to get stuck in that at all. That's kind of just been our own like signature style on it. But the calls to action,
like the Poo Pourri, for instance, like I think you did a free tester or something that worked.
Yeah.
What were some of the offers?
the more direct you can be with people, I think when it comes to the call to action, if they stuck around that long in your video, it's okay to speak with them very directly about buying it. You don't have to get overly clever. You don't have to feel like you have to be funny. In fact, in many ways, that can often be a distraction from the sale. And so you want to be careful of that. But yeah, so Poo Pourris, when Aura Brush had a similar type of thing that worked for a long time, which was you can get your Poo Pourri for free, just pay for shipping and handling. It's the same thing for Aura Brush, get an Aura Brush free, pay for shipping and handling, that kind of an offer. Like Purples was that they provided free shipping and a 100-night guarantee. And so there's all sorts of ways to kind of remind people that, like, yeah, it's time to become a buyer. But if people are sticking around your ad, they expect you to ask them to buy. In fact, I feel like if you just kind of leave it empty-handed and open-ended, then you're kind of doing the customer a disservice.
Totally. Yeah. So much to go over, so little time. I have one last question for Jenna. I mean, like, I encourage anyone to get the book From Poop to Gold. For one, they also have a Harmon Brothers University. I think it's harmonbrothersuniversity.com where people can check out.
Yeah, harmonbrothersuniversity.com has a course on there, how to write ads that sell, which is the first course we came out with. And that one has that one's an application process, and there's only so many people we let in the time. But that one's a really good resource if you're wanting to learn just how to make your ads funny. We have harmonbrothersuniversity.com/comedy. And that one will take you to our comedy course, which is a really kind of a fun thing that we're really excited about. And
there's a really good YouTube video from you guys too on how to be funny, I think. So people should check that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then From Poop to Gold, our book, it's on harmonbrothersbook.com. That's available there. I think it's got a special offer for like $20, or if you want to get it on Amazon, it's $30.
Yeah. And From Poop to Gold podcast, check it out. Last question. You need to get From Poop to Gold book. I mean, it documents your guys' viewpoint in FiberFix, Chatbooks, Camp Chef, all these, and there's some great stories behind it. Last question is, since Inspired Insider, I always ask low moment and high moment, proud moment.
Yeah.
What's been kind of a low moment? What's been an especially proud moment for you?
Yeah. Gosh, I'd say one of the low moments for us was definitely coming out of doing that nativity video, where we were at a point of real frustration where, like I said, I drained almost my entire savings account in order to be able to kind of make this business work. Benton was driving Uber, our CEO, and we just didn't really see the end in sight. We'd had this success now with Poo Pourri and stuff, and we just weren't seeing it, like you said, financially. And we didn't have our business model nailed down, and that was really tough. It was really kind of a dark moment. And I know a lot of people, like you said, kind of look at us and be like, overnight success and all this kind of stuff. And they forget, like, we had some real hard times where we were just trying to make ends meet by doing just little one-off little videos that you've never even heard anything about. We hadn't figured our stuff out. And then like what turned, ultimately we call it our poop to gold moment, right?
Yeah, truly.
Turned a really crappy situation into a good one is that Squatty Potty came along, right? And we were able to do a deal that made sense for both parties. And it was just a tremendous success that launched us and finally, I think, cemented us in people's minds as kind of authorities in this space. And then that's when the leads really started coming in a way where we did Purple and FiberFix, Chatbooks, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel, thank you. I appreciate your time. I can't speak highly enough about From Poop to Gold. Even if you don't care about ads and marketing, there's really good stuff on how you incentivize staff to be on the same page and make it a win-win. It's all of those things on running a company. So I encourage everyone to get the book. Check out. We'll post some of the link all of the year, embed some of the videos you guys have done on this. But I just want to be the first one to say thank you. Go to harmbrothers.com, check all their stuff out. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's fun being on.
Yeah.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.